that situation in ways NAMCO, we had global ports where the people could have from Turkey. So where was NAMCO? One that they have not produced was done. So I agree with where Sheffield was going in terms of this discussion. What was the purpose for creating thing which we can say is so useful that it ought to be?
Means that the public, government businesses, departments, ministries, the scrutiny that they go through, the same does not apply to NAMCO. So I think what I'm hearing from you is the need for transparency. This is government funds. We're talking about government funds. And as taxpayers, we do not know what is happening to these funds. Am I hearing
Yes,
this correctly?
Yes, yes. Take for instance, a simple thing like Statoil Corporation are required to carry a specialized plates on their vehicles so that the public can identify a government-owned vehicle. Now, an NAMCO vehicle doesn't have to do that. And so a private person can be enjoying the fruits of this government-owned asset, and it's not known. The whole idea, and I think the name NAMCO is intentional. It's a way to name off the assets of the government by certain people. And sometimes I think that's what they were trying to say with this NAMCO.
Yes, I mean, certainly we can see that based on the history of NAMCO so far, we're really questioning the relevance of this body and why it exists other than to make an opportunity, create an opportunity for persons to be paid directors' fees, because I heard the Prime Minister say that any suggestion that we would dissolve NAMCO, we said we'd suspend, we'd audit, and ultimately we would dissolve NAMCO because it serves no useful purpose. He's saying that there would be massive job losses. That's an absolute lie. What job losses? How many people would NAMCO employ? NAMCO is a holding company. NAMCO has no need to have any string of employees. NAMCO has a board of directors, mainly government ministers. They're the only ones who are benefiting from NAMCO. The society as a whole, the economy as a whole, has not benefited from NAMCO. So we see it as nothing but an opportunity for them to find layers to use money which would avoid the type of regular oversight that you would have. And it's not a new concept, and we have to understand that. It's not a new concept. It has been tried in other countries, and I'm yet to see a success story coming out of that type of construct. You take, for example, recently in Malaysia, you ask what happened to ex-Prime Minister Razak. He was over one of these bodies, similar to the same NAMCO, where they created this body called the One Malaysia Development Board, and it was seen as the investment arm, as they call it, of the government. And in due time, the same body accumulated a huge amount of assets, a huge amount of wealth, and the same person who was over it just less than 6 months ago, he was sentenced, I think, to 13 years in prison by a court in Malaysia. That's what these things tend to do. And there was one, I think it was in Trinidad, where the experience similarly has been an experience where eventually they had to look at it and dissolve it because it simply was serving no useful purpose and was nothing but an avenue for politicians to find ways to siphon off money and to operate in a way that was not transparent. So we do not see that NAMCO makes any sense at all, and therefore our position is that we would audit it, we would suspend it, audit it, dissolve it, and that would then create the situation where the dividends and the assets that belong to the government, these would go back into the consolidated fund. But we are also looking at a system whereby we create wealth in ways that Antiguans and Barbudans can enjoy this wealth by sheer ownership. And that's very important, through sheer ownership.
Okay, so you've taken us there because, as you said, the idea is a UPP government will suspend audit and dissolve NAMCO. And the question then would be, what would be the alternative?
Right, and we say the alternative would be a more private sector-led development strategy. Now, what do we mean by a private sector-led growth strategy? They are using NAMCO to say that NAMCO would be the leader in terms of promoting growth, which would be government-led. Well, we've seen that when government lead these processes, generally you do not have a history of success. We believe that there are persons out there, Antiguans and Barbudans, who have demonstrated that capacity for good business decisions. I mean, you take some of the young entrepreneurs coming up at Antigua. Take, for example, Dennis, out at Dennis's restaurant. I think his name is Dennis Thomas. Now, you look at what he has grown from and what he has grown to. He started his project out at Fry's Beach during the time when I was Minister of Tourism. And I remembered the time very, very well. And we gave him the type of support that allowed him to get a good kickstart. But since then, I mean, he has grown to a point where we feel so proud of him as an Antiguan and Barbudan. These are the type of people we need to encourage. We need to give them the sort of concessions. We need to give them as much help as possible because we know that they know how to make good business decisions. You have people like Devon Benta. I'm just calling a few names arbitrarily. You have people like Wills Martin. You're looking at Sir George Ryan. You're looking at the Bento brothers who developed the mall over Village Walk over on Friars Hill Road. These are people who have shown that if they're given the type of encouragement and support, they can make this economy fly. And so we're looking at bringing Antiguans and Barbudans into the ownership of some of these companies. And so one of the issues that we feel that we would want to pursue after due consultation is that we have won the war for political democracy. We must now win the war for economic democracy. And in doing so, we are saying that it does not have to be state ownership of the assets. There can be ownership by the ordinary men and women in Antigua and Barbuda, using a similar model to what happens with, say, Antigua Commercial Bank, which has hundreds of shareholders. And it doesn't matter how small your shareholding is, the point is you have a stake in the ownership. And this is part of the war for economic democracy, where we have already won the war for political democracy as we celebrate our national independence in another few weeks.
Okay. Brother Sherfield?
Yes, I think these $100 million worth of assets can be redeployed in the hands of a solid middle class, so that the middle class can be the stabilizing force in the economy. And having them in NAMCO under the control of 9 ministers of government, I don't think it's serving a very useful purpose for the country at large.
So what we're talking about then in all of this is empowerment of the people,
yes,
putting the power. And I like the point you made, Sherfield, about the middle class, because it's an important, if we have to look about the middle class in terms of taking this country forward. And I think, you know, as you say, we're empowering, not that those who are not in the middle class will not benefit as well, but we have to drive to make sure that everyone benefits. And the question might be asked, how does the smaller man benefit from such an initiative or such a thought process as we're putting forward tonight?
By the ownership of shares. We cannot put the price of the shares to such a point that only the wealthy and the privileged can own shares in any state-owned enterprises. We need to make the prices affordable to the ordinary man and woman in Antigua and Barbuda so that everybody can share in the prosperity of the nation. This is the way we're going to build wealth in the country. This is the way we're going to encourage Antiguans and Barbudans to create and maintain wealth, because at the moment, Antiguans and Barbudans and a lot of people in the Caribbean, we only hold wealth as cash or deposits in the bank or through land. But it is a modern society that we're seeking to create, whereby the wealth will also be held as shares so that everybody feels a part of our economy. And this is the way we're going to have to power the economy forward, by giving incentives to local Antiguans and Barbudans and not relying on the state to do all of this. Because I just want to repeat that economic democracy does not just mean state ownership of national assets. It means popular ownership of national assets, bringing Antiguans and Barbudans, bringing teachers in, firemen in, bringing carpenters, people who do computer, young people. This is what we need to do, bring diversity to ownership, and so that Antiguans and Barbudans can begin to really power this economy, because that has been the problem. The problem has been that we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we're getting the same results. We have to free ourselves and to liberate Antiguans and Barbudans who have the entrepreneurial inclination and potential, and put government resources behind them and give the ordinary man and woman an opportunity to own a piece of the pie.
Okay. There's a question on the board. Why do you think the ABLP have refused to table the audited reports of NAMCO? Sure.
And you'd have to go through the bylaws and see what is required there. Whereas now, if it was a statutory corporation, the Act would usually mandate that the audited reports be tabled. And the reason why do I think that they refuse to table it is because they want to hide whatever is in there. If we find out that the audited, and if it's something that they don't want you to see, that's why it's not tabled.
But you made an interesting point there, because if when the accounts are audited and something untowards or things untowards are found, what?
We'll have to say whether this is acceptable, and we do that by our votes.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's see another question. This one, will the UPP tax the rich and relieve the...
Where every resident pays his or her fair share to the upkeep of the country. Antigua and Barbuda into a clear and transparent. Everyone involved in this discussion according to their means. So this is something that we have to look at very carefully and to ensure. So we do so by giving the necessary incentives. You look at some of the examples that we can use. In 2007, we saw the creation of over 40 small hotel properties in this country. And that was because we went to Parliament and we passed the Cricket World Cup Special Incentives Act. And that brought out over 40 entrepreneurial units led by Antiguans and Barbudans, who have now been able to establish a stake in the accommodation sector by building 5-room, 10-room, 15-room properties, which they can now expand. These are things that have been done and have worked. So we know that we can stimulate economic activity by incentivizing the entrepreneurial necessities in order to make these businesses work. Similarly, we passed the CABI, Construct Antigua and Barbuda Initiative. That was an incentive whereby the government gave up some taxes. We got the hardware stores to give up. A lot was given up, but in the end, the result was a reduction by 30% of the cost of residential construction. And that in itself stimulated construction activity, and this administration has actually carried it on because it's a program that works. So we feel that the whole question of taxation must be built around fairness, and it must also be aimed at stimulating production and growth in the economy. And so in the end, our mantra and our position is this: is we're a people first organization, and everything that will be done will be based on that mantra of putting people first and ensuring that everybody pays a fair share.
That's fine. Okay, can we see that question about youth entrepreneurship? There's the one that I wanted to link to what you were saying earlier. What real plans, not lip service, do you have for empowering the youth who want to become entrepreneurs in their own country?
I would answer that by saying not only entrepreneurs, but successful entrepreneurs. Because you see, anybody can become an entrepreneur. But what we want is that you become a successful entrepreneur. And that's where our YES program comes in, the Young Entrepreneurs Setup. This means that we not only say to you, as the current administration is saying, oh, there's an entrepreneurial development fund, and you just need to go and apply. 2 days ago, I was speaking to someone, and they wanted to get some money from the Entrepreneurial Development Fund, but they were asking me if I can find a way to assist them with their business plan. Now, if you're going to have a business plan properly done, it's going to cost you maybe $1,200, $1,500, can cost you even more. And that is the first hurdle a lot of people stumble at. We say that we would empower the investment authority, the Antigua and Barbuda Investment Authority, hire young accountants, young finance specialists, help you with your cash flow projection, help you with your business plan, help you with your marketing plan, help you with your back office plans, so that when you go out there, we minimize the risk for you by helping you. Now, when you do that, you're helping persons to become successful entrepreneurs, not just entrepreneurs. We would have what we call an incubator system, whereby for the first several years, we cover you. We give you the type of support and protection whereby you can get premises that can be commonly used, so you save your rent. We help you with your back office operations, as we said, so that somebody can help you to do your books. Basically, we hold your hand and help you up the stairs so that you can become a successful entrepreneur. That's how we're going to build the economy, by empowering Antiguans and Barbudans who will become the driving force of our economy, not NAMCO.
Okay. You wanted to come in, Sheffield? Okay. Someone is inquiring as to whether or not, if you know of any other Caribbean country that has a similar structure to our NAMCO.
As I indicated, I believe Trinidad had one. I tried to find it online just recently, but I wasn't finding it, and I believe it's because it's been dissolved. So it's not a model that many are adopting today, but it's an old model. We've seen countries in other parts of the world use this, but I'm yet to see a single success story that this has been used. Now, there's a similar approach, you may say, in today's China, but that is peculiar to the Chinese circumstances. The type of discipline in their government and the serious way in which they approach a lot of these issues, we have to ask ourselves whether we can claim within governments in these parts of the world, whether we have that type of discipline, or whether it's just going to be another case where friends and families going to be the ones who are going to benefit rather than the people of Antigua and Barbuda benefiting.
Okay. Sheffield, I'd want to put this one to you. The new Labour Party government since 2014 has gotten involved in a number of ventures, basically competing with the private sector rather than being government. What are your views in terms of government, whatever administration, creating that enabling environment for our private sector to thrive rather than being in direct competition with the struggling sector as we have it now?
Well, it can never be fair for the government to be competing with the private sector. The government makes policies.
Yes.
So if the government has a business, a horse in the race, and is creating the policy, how can you, as a player, think that is going to be fair? The government is a regulator. If the government is a regulator and it has a business and it has to regulate my competitor, so how can the government be looking into the competitors' books and records and has a competing business? The government should be the enabler to help business to work and not competing with the businesses. So it is never a fair setup for the government to be competing with the private sector.
Your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with that. And there we see so often our competing with supermarkets, government competing in almost every sector. We say you cannot expect Antiguans and Barbudans to successfully grasp the real opportunities for economic growth and development, for business growth and development, when the government continues to be a direct competitor. Government will be a strategic owner, of course, in certain sectors. When it comes to hospital, health is a right. So you cannot just leave that to private enterprise. Of course not. That is something that the government has to be involved to make sure we deliver quality health care to our people. You look at education. You couldn't just privatize education or just say that you only have private schools. The government must be involved because education is so important for nation building and for the personal development of each individual of society. Of course, if private schools want to develop, no problem with that. But there must be a fundamental right to education, and so the government must be there to provide such services. National security, government has to be in there to keep the place safe, make sure that the police officers are properly treated, make sure the prison officers are properly treated, making sure that the services that provide safety for our nation, those are taken care of. So government has its role to play. Government must make sure people are providing and receiving proper health, proper education, that the place is safe, and that we enjoy a quality of life befitting this time in historically. However, we must free up the economy. As I said, we've won the war for political democracy. What we must now fight and win is the war for economic democracy by bringing the ordinary man and woman into the ownership of corporations, companies, cooperatives, encouraging such bodies, and the government staying out of it. Government has no business dredging. I mean, empower Antiguans to do that. Look how long, 4 years now, this entity is dredging, and up to now we cannot accommodate the OASIS class. Who are the people involved? We need to know that. You see other areas where they are getting involved, and you would expect that these are areas that we could empower Antiguans and Barbudans to get involved in these type of activities, incentivize them so that they can grow. And then you take the tax at the back end so that you help people to create wealth, and then you tax a portion of that wealth so that everybody can benefit, rather than the government getting involved at the front end and making a mess of it. As I come back to NAMCO, what has NAMCO done? Apart from a lot of big talk, a lot of big chat about they're going to leverage this and leverage that. What have they leveraged? They couldn't even find $6 million when they were in problems recently, and they had to go run into Mr. Barrett to borrow $6 million. Where was NAMCO? It's a waste of time. Need to get rid of it. And people like Gaston Brown and so on, you know, they're talking up these things because they know what they're getting out of it.
Okay, our time is quickly going, but I want to squeeze in this question. Someone is asking or suggesting any thoughts on an e-government platform, for example, to extract a birth certificate online, pay online, and receive the certificate via email within minutes?
Well, of course.
Or renew your driver's license online. This service will help us in the diaspora.
This is the direction in which we need to go. We need to go to the point where we have modern e-government, where these types of services can be provided and turn around in less than no time. So of course, that's the direction in which we need to go. Modern technology for modern society.
And Sherfield, 30 seconds on that?
Yeah, I think that what that does too, it empowers the young people who are trained in e-commerce and e-education. They would be very important in that direction.
Okay. Our time has come and gone so quickly, so I'm going to give you the opportunity, Sherfield, to go first with your closing comments.
Yes, with respect to the prison reform, I think it is very important that we take a serious look at that. Prisoners don't vote, we know, but it is important to the welfare of the entire country that the prison system is one which is fair and just and modern. With respect to NAMCO, I think that to take $100 million out of the government consolidated funds and put it into a private company, it does nothing more than to assist in getting the money out of that private company in ways that you would not be able to get it out of the government.
And Harold?
A transformation is on the horizon. And I just want to encourage everyone to stay with the United Progressive Party, the right choice, in terms of a transformation of our penal system to good, solid penal reform, and also the whole question of economic democracy, moving from political democracy to economic democracy, empowering our people, and a clear strategy that allows our people to be the drivers of growth in our economy. That's the way to go in order to free up the country and to bring a new level of prosperity to our people.
Okay. And on that note, sadly, we've come to the end of this evening's program. I want to say thank you again to those who participated in the first part of the program dealing with penal reform. Thanks so very much for that rich discussion. And for now, to Brother Sherfield, to political leader Harold Lovell, taking the discussion even further and zeroing in on NAMCO. And as you say, what's the line?
Suspend. Audit and dissolve.
And dissolve. That's the direction of the United Progressive Party. So until next week, when we look at some other issues, stay tuned. We will let you know what our topics will be. Continue to engage, and we thank you so much for viewing and for listening. Until next week, I'm Sean Nicholas saying good night.
People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. We offer savings accounts, deposits, fixed deposits, loans, among other related services. You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street, Monday to Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with proof of ID and address, along with $15 to cover registration and passbook. And you'll be set and on your way. For further information, call 462-8888 or 727-2285. People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Today, tomorrow, together.
It's the Honorable Jamal Pringle and the All Saints East and St. Luke Branch Entrepreneur Expo and Pre-Independence Food Fest, Saturday 29th October, Macpon Plainfield, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Support small businesses, showcasing food and beverage, clothing and textiles, horticulture, arts and crafts, among others, and get a taste of local cuisine at the Pre-Independence Food Fest. Music and entertainment throughout the day to keep everyone engaged. Register at the All Saints branch office, Progressive 107.3 FM at Belmont, the Opposition Leader's office on Market Street, or call 562